I didn't have money for a motel. I didn't want to risk another night sleeping under a highway overpass where cops or worse might kick me awake. So when I found this gravel pit, it was quiet and hauled out from years of neglect. It felt like in the moment it was my best option. A man-made crater outside this dead-end town that nobody really worked in anymore, and nobody seemed to care about either. And that's really what made it perfect for me. Now I know what you're thinking. That doesn't really sound like stealth camping. The thing was, it was still fenced, still private property. Just beyond the tree line, there stood this trailer park as well. I was very much camping among civilization. That pit stretched wide. The walls were sloping down into a basin that was littered with weeds and busted machinery. Some rusted out conveyor belts, a pickup with no doors, the kind of place teenagers probably snuck into for beers and dares. But it was dead quiet when I scouted it. The only sound was the river running somewhere far beyond the edge, and music from the trailers themselves. I picked my spot up at the top lip, where the scrub brush clung stubbornly to the edge. I figured from there I could see anybody coming in, if anybody even bothered. The town had that hollowed out bone feel. I dropped my pack and unrolled the bivy sack. The dirt smelled like lime and old diesel, sharp in the nose, but I welcomed it. At least I wasn't under buzzing fluorescent lights in a bus station or stretching out somewhere in some drainage culvert. This was open, raw, and private. As the sun fell, the pit became alive. Crickets started their high-pitched racket, and the air cooled down fast, desert cold in the hollows. I ate a half a can of beans that were cold, washing them down with warm water and laid back. Above me, the stars were burning crisp through the haze. I remember thinking to myself that I'm actually get some real rest tonight. But sleep will never come clean when you're living rough. I stirred with every snap of brush, every rustle in the weeds, every shift in the dirt beneath me. The silence of the pit made each sound catastrophic, echoing up the slope. I tried to keep my breathing steady, telling myself it was only the rabbits or the... When it finally came, the sound that pulled me straight up from a half-dream to cold awareness. I knew right away that it wasn't an animal. The rhythm was far too measured. A boot sole was crushing through the gravel, one after another. Not really fast or loud, but steady, and it definitely was coming my way. Somebody else was inside this pit. I froze in my bag, heart pushing hard against my ribs, and listened closely. The footsteps didn't wander, they descended, down that sloping wall slow and carefully. Whoever it was, they weren't drunk or stumbling. They were pacing themselves, creeping slowly down in the dark. That's when it really hit me. I made a mistake camping above the bowl. I never thought there would be somebody in it. The guy likely watched me the entire time from the moment that I showed up. I didn't move, not yet. Just listened as the gravel whispered under their weight, getting closer and closer. Whoever they were, they knew exactly where they were headed. Finally, the crunch of gravel slowed, then stopped. My ears were straining against the silence, but the pit held still. No wind, no animals, just a void where the earth was now falling away. I inched my bivvy open, barely enough to peer down the slope. Moonlight painted the basin in this silver and shadow. And then I saw him. A figure stood near the rusted conveyor, tall and skinny, hands hanging at his side. No flashlight, no phone, just still, like he was really trying to remain unseen. It was too late for that though, but what was I gonna do now? It briefly occurred to me that I had the high ground, and I figured there was some kind of advantage in that. My gut still was nodding up, and to this day, it's the closest I've ever come to filling my pants. Then I heard a clank, a metallic scrape that filled the air. He bent and picked something up from the ground and was now dragging it behind him. It was a length of chain, long as hell, clattering over the rocks as he dragged it right up to me. He wasn't looking around, he didn't act surprised. I could actually see his eyes glowing as he stared up in my direction. I held my breath. I was weaponless, without really any options other than just booking it. My body screamed at me to move, to run, but the drop was sheer before me, and behind me, it was just a potholed gravel. If I slid down, I'd almost land at his feet. If I got a bad start running the other direction, he'd probably still catch me. Seconds were dragging into hours. He stayed down there unseen except when the moonlight caught that chain in his hands. Every so often he'd stop, lean his head back and stare toward the lip where I lay, and I could swear that he could see me even in the dark. Then he went still, literally melted into the shadows down there, and I lost sight of him. The quiet stretched on until my nerves twitched raw. I eased my pack closer, fingers searching for anything I could find to protect me. The air was like chalk, just drying out my mouth, and somewhere below, that damn chain kept jingling in the dirt. Then came the scrape once more, a lot closer. Not at the basin floor, but halfway up the slope. Gravel shifted, dislodged. He was climbing now. I swallowed hard and pressed flat, every muscle locked in. He stopped maybe 20 feet down from me. The chain rattled like a rabid dog and was at the end. I couldn't take it anymore. I finally burst from my bivy pack, half slung with this knife in my hand. Gravel shot out beneath me as I scrambled into the brush, praying to God that I spooked him in the moment and created some kind of opportunity to get away. Behind me, the chain clattered like he dropped it and then lunged into motion. My boots barely found purchase as I clawed at the dirt, hauling myself away from him. Then I heard him laugh. The hell was wrong with this guy? I hit the ridge gasping, stumbling into the weeds, and bolted blindly into the trees. Branches tore at my arms, roots snagged my boots, but I continued on, lungs ripping fire until that pit was gone behind me, and only the nearby river guiding me. I made sure to move away from that trailer park and the quarry. I didn't stop until the eastern sky bled with the color of dawn, and by the time the sun was now cracking over the horizon, my body felt like it had been through a torture pit. I staggered along the riverbank. Every sound behind me was 1 decibel away from sounding like that goddamn chain again. I didn't stop moving until I reached the edge of town, collapsing in the weeds behind this shuttered gas station. I'd left all my belongings at the top of that pit. I sat there shaking, clenching my fists, and trying to convince myself it was all a nightmare, a trick of the dark. Some drifter just looking for scrap metal, nothing more, business as usual. But the truth would gnaw at me. I think I saw what he was doing, and it looked like he was making a noose. By mid-morning, fear had given way to a reckless pit bull. I had to know. I had to see the pit in the daylight, to prove to myself it wasn't what it really felt like. I looped wide through the brush, creeping back as quietly as I could. The pit looked a lot smaller in the sun, harmless almost. Birds were hopping between the weeds, and that rusted conveyor stood crooked against the blue sky. For a second, I briefly thought to myself that maybe I imagined it all. Then at the basin of the floor, that chain lay in this neat coil, heavy links catching the light. A great deal of it lay apart from the rest, and I could indeed see the loose loop of a hangman's noose. It wasn't perfect. I think only rope would allow that, but it was pretty damn good and pretty damn close. That sight hollowed me out. Whoever he was, he hadn't just been wandering around. He'd been building something, preparing. I didn't really want to study or find out any more. I backed away slowly at first, then faster until I found myself sprinting again. This time, not stopping until the town's cracked asphalt road swallowed me up. I had all my shit with me and promised to never camp around town again. For days after this event, I couldn't close my eyes without hearing that sound in my head, without tasting the dry dust in my throat. I didn't risk stealth camping again, not for months. I'd take cop shelters, even cold pavement, before I'd stretch out in a hollow like that again. I think the real spooky part, I drifted from town to town for a little while after, and eventually I came across a newspaper. I read an article about a guy that was discovered in that very gravel pit a few months before me, hanging from a chain, killed. Did I see that guy's ghost? Or did I see the dude that killed him? The storm came down in sheets, hammering that 2-lane blacktop until my boots started slipping on the asphalt. I'd been walking for hours now, thumb out. No luck with rides though. The sky broke wide open and I knew I needed to find cover fast. I spotted the cemetery by the flash of the lightning. Iron gate crooked, gravestones leaning like drunks, trees nodding up above it in a canopy. The kind of place you'd cross yourself, passing during the daylight, but at night with rain smashing down, I guess it was better than nothing. In fact, the other folks experienced it with homelessness can confirm. Graveyards can be very comfortable. There's rain and wind cover, sometimes even places indoors. Very little foot traffic. I've spent a week inside a graveyard, just living with the dead. So I ducked inside, shoulders hunched, pack close to my chest, mud sucking at my boots. The storm swallowed every sound except for the thunder. Toward the back stood this shack, a caretaker's office maybe, padlocked and boarded up. No luck there. So I picked a tree instead, an oak wide enough to lean against, rigged my tarp low, tying it quickly, letting the branches shield me. Off in the dark, I could see a porch light. There was a neighborhood just beyond the back fence, and at the entrance, a single home across the street. I had to keep a low profile to avoid police activity. I sat on my pack, water dripping down my neck, the stink of mildew filling up my nose now. Lightning flashed, throwing the whole graveyard into relief. Stones cracked and canted, names carved into them that I couldn't quite make out. Just rows and rows of the dead, their markers half swallowed up by the weeds. And me now sitting among them, smelling like ass and soaked from head to toe. I'll just wait out the storm, sleep light, and move on at first light. So I pulled my hood over my face and just tried to collect myself. But it's never really truly quiet in a place like this. Every gust of wind would sound like whispering. Every creak of a tree limb would feel like footsteps off in the dark. It's creepy as hell. It would keep me on edge. And just as I got used to it, the storm cut off and everything got real quiet, from one extreme to the other. And now I was creeped out again. Not long after the storm ended, I heard a voice carrying across the cemetery. Then another. 2 men. I froze, tarp crackling as I shifted. Their voices were growing clearer, gravelly and hushed, words clipped out from the distance. They weren't drunk, they weren't laughing, they were working something out, directing each other. Lightning cracked again off in the distance and I saw them, 2 figures walking with a clip between the stones, each of them shouldering a shovel. Damn, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I pulled the tarp down and pressed flat to the wet ground, trying to even barely take a breath. They weren't wandering. They moved straight down this row, scanning stones and whispering off names. "Here," I heard one of them say, plain as day. He sounded certain about whatever he was speaking about. Then I heard the metallic thump of shovels striking the ground as it followed, a steady rhythm, soil hitting soil. I lay paralyzed, watching the glow of their cigarettes flare each time they bent over to dig. No hesitation, no looking around, razor focused on the task at hand. And I knew whatever they were here for couldn't be good. Shovels in a cemetery? I might be a humble homeless dipshit, but I don't really need a degree to know these guys are stealing from a corpse, and probably a recently plotted one. That first shovel bite made my gut drop, the hollow scrape of steel cutting against soaked dirt again and again, steady as a drumbeat. Mud slop, then I heard a grunt of a man lifting. They weren't playing around. These dudes were hard at work. I slid under the tarp and rainwater now was dripping onto my face. My fingers clenched around the strap of my pack. I had a knife inside, but I didn't pull it out yet. I was outmatched, 2 against 1, plus they had shovels. My knife wasn't really gonna bail me out of this one. "Deeper," one of them said, his voice cutting across the dark. He sounded like he was right next to me now. I took a risk and tilted my head. Moonlight was punching through a tear in the clouds, and it lit them up for just a brief moment. 2 men in dark jackets, faces hidden under caps. One shoveled quick and hard, mud flying up over his boots. The other one was crouched, flashlight cupped in his palm, scanning the headstone like he was double-checking a map. "This is definitely it," the crouched one muttered. "Don't fucking stop now." The rain started to pick back up again. Every sound carried. I felt like I was surrounded. My heartbeat was pounding in my ears, and I swore they'd hear me if it didn't slow down. The guy with the shovel hit something. The sound changed, metal clinking wood, and he stopped panting. "All right, got it," he said. Lightning cracked, bright as a camera flash. I saw it clear. They had most of the grave cleared out now and were clearing away the last of the mud. The men dropped onto their knees, scraping dirt with their bare hands. I watched as their fingers clawed mud, nails blackened, until the wood showed clean. I was on a small incline that just allowed this slight vantage. "Open it," one of them said, and those words chilled me flat. It was businesslike. Whoever this was, they didn't give a shit about what they were doing. One of the men pulled a pry bar from his coat, jammed it into the seam. Wood groaned, splintered, and popped. The coffin cracked open with a sound that made bile climb in my throat. They both leaned over, bodies blocking my view. I could only hear it now, the shift of something inside and the dull thud of movement, shifting something back and forth. It almost sounded like they were crawling inside the casket itself. Then silence followed. The man with the flashlight leaned closer, shining down into that box. I caught his face for half a brief moment, cheeks hollow, eyes sunk deep. The man had no hesitation. He laughed. "I told you she was here." The other man cursed underneath his breath. Something thudded wetly as they lifted it free. I was straining to see now, but all I caught was the shape of something wrapped in plastic, heavy enough that it took both of them to drag it out. They dropped it beside the grave with a wet slap. My stomach lurched and I damn near puked. I have no idea what I was looking at. The rain was really picking up again, thin needles falling through the branches. One man unzipped the bundle with a knife, and I saw pale skin inside, clean, still full of life. It barely even withered away yet. I slapped a hand over my mouth to kill the sound that was now rising up in my throat. They crouched low, talking fast. Too quiet to catch everything they said, but the words I did hear twisted me cold. Something about a package, move it now, don't leave a trace. She's all ours now. I can't wait to taste it. What the fuck? One of them stood and turned toward the tree line, toward me. I snapped my head down and pressed flat, every nerve now screaming. Boots were slogging closer. I counted the steps, shallow mud sucks, one after another. He stopped maybe 10 feet from my tarp. I could actually see his boots. They were mud-caked, shovel blade leaning up against his leg. He lit another cigarette. The glow was like a burning eye in the dark. I clenched every muscle, praying the tarp blended with the tree, praying the rain muffled my panicked breathing. The lighter clicked shut. He blew smoke and scanned the graves, then turned back, stomping toward that pit. I waited until I heard the shovel hit the dirt again and the sound of them covering up that empty coffin. My body shook, my mind screamed to bolt, but my legs were not listening. All I could do was lie there, pinned underneath the thin nylon, as the two men dug through the night on this unholy mission. When they finally dragged their bundle away, boots slapping the mud, I still hadn't moved, even as the sound of them faded, even as the storm cleared up and the night went silent again. I laid fetal until the sun rose. When I did crawl out, tarp soaked, heart still kind of hammering, I saw the grave, fresh dirt mounded sloppily, shovel marks still raw, wood splinters left all over. Whatever they'd taken, it wasn't supposed to leave with them, and I swear to God, I think they took the body. By dawn, the rain had stopped and the cemetery sat in washed out stillness. I crawled from underneath the tarp, every joint stiff, nerves completely raw still. I felt like a crazy person, even more so now than normal. What the hell did I just witness? I walked over to that sloppy plot, looked it over. Boot marks, cigarette butts. These guys were sloppy, did not care who discovered their crime. It made me think it was personal, like a blood feud kind of thing, some kind of revenge scheme, I don't know. I couldn't look too long though, my body wanted to run, but my mind made me take one last glance. Whoever they'd hauled out of there wasn't bones or dust. That skin I'd glimpsed was smooth, clean. Whoever it had been, they died very recently. I left my tarp and pack underneath that oak, It didn't really matter to me anymore. I needed distance. I slipped through the crooked gate, boots squishing in the mud, walked fast and faster until that cemetery shrank behind me. All morning that image would continue to chew at me. Two men digging, dragging something out they knew was out there, laughing like they'd won. I never reported it because who would believe me? It would probably land me in jail too, so I didn't bother. But I know what I saw, and I know what I heard. And I never set foot inside a cemetery ever again. Florida nights always feel different when you're sleeping outside. The air hangs heavy, thick with humidity, buzzing with insects that just never stop. I've been walking through the canal path all afternoon, figuring I'll find a patch of ground somewhere off of the road, close enough to the water for a breeze, far enough back to stay hidden. Eventually, I picked a spot between two palmetto scrubs and a few spindly pines. From the path, you couldn't see it. From the water, nothing but reeds and darkness. It wasn't pretty, but stealth camping never really is. I dropped my pack, cleared a space with my boots, and then set up my tent. The canal itself was a black ribbon at night, frogs croaking loud enough to cover smaller noises. Every so often, a fish would splash or a gator's snout surfaced, nostrils puffing out steam into the air. I was fairly positive this spot was good, right? Wildlife meant people didn't come out this way very often. I could still hear the road behind me, the one I drifted off of, and that was also nearest the neighborhood. I could see houses in pretty much every direction. I ate my jerky in the dark, salt sticking to my fingers, then chased it down with a swig of warm water. My shirt clung damp to my back, but I welcomed the heat. Better than a cold night under an overpass. When you're homeless for long enough, you start to chase the good weather. The hours stretched and the path grew still. No cars from the nearby road, no voices, nothing but the steady hum of the cicadas. I was dozing off, woke and then doze again, drifting in that half state where every sound becomes kind of shapeless. Not long after, a motor came, low and steady, drawing closer to the canal path. Not a car, too slow and chuggy. I thought maybe a four-wheeler or a boat engine carrying through the air. I lay still listening and waiting for it to show itself. The motor then cut off, silence dropping like a bomb. I sat up, heart in my throat, and waited to see what would happen. At first, it was nothing, still silence, but then voices, a man low and flat, and a woman laughing under her breath. They weren't loud, but I could tell by the way they carried themselves they were close. Close enough I could hear the scuff of their shoes in the dirt. I was hoping, okay, they'll just pass. Just a couple sneaking out for a smoke, a drink, maybe a late night hookup, but the steps didn't drift past. They circled, slowly. They wandered around me for at least 25 minutes. The branches brushed, leaves crunched, their feet moving closer and closer to my tent. I'd hidden myself well, but still, this was too coincidental. They had to know I was here. The woman giggled and then the man shushed her. Then silence fell again. Then my tent shook, a faint brush like a hand sliding across the nylon. My lungs locked and my fist found my machete under my backpack. I still hadn't moved, but I could see a hand moving on the outside of my nylon cover. The material then went still, my ears rang, every instinct suddenly telling me to do something, anything to preserve myself. Then another brush of the nylon, slow and painfully creepy this time that it's hard to describe. A palm dragging against the ridge of the shelter, someone a mere 2 feet from me, barely rubbing my tent. The man whispered something I couldn't catch, and the woman laughed again, but softer, like she was crouched outside. They weren't just passing by, they were checking me. The tent dipped at one corner, weight pressing down as if a hand was now testing it. I fought the urge to immediately thrash, to bolt blindly into the scrub. Then the boots shuffled back towards the palmetto. Gravel crunched as they circled wide, their shapes just now shadows sliding across the darkness beyond the tarp. The man spoke again, flat as a stone. "Here's good." Something metallic rattled, a can being set down, a jug. Then A smell hit my nostrils, sharp and choking, chemical, gasoline. The woman giggled like it was a joke. "Don't get it on me." I bit down on my lip until I tasted blood. My mind was reeling. Are they gonna torch it? Torch me? Burn me the fuck out of my tent? They knew I was back here. They came and made sure. They'd follow me? I slid my knife back in the pack. It was too small to matter and wormed over to the far edge of the tarp. Every rustle of nylon sounded like thunder in the still night, and my chest now was scraping dirt. Outside, liquid splashed against the ground. The smell was now overwhelming. I could picture it. Fuel soaking into sand, darkening patches of that palmetto, pooling under my shelter, splashing up against the walls. "Light it?" the woman asked. "No, not yet," the man then muttered back. "Wait just a second, I don't want to mess this up." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I laid down and unzipped the bottom of the door, and through the slit, I could see them out there in the moonlight. The man was kneeling, can in hand, sloshing another arc of gas, and the woman was holding something small and shiny, a lighter. I didn't think anymore. I moved. I slid silently as I could, belly into the dirt, pulling myself into the brush on the far side, palmetto fronds scraping at my arms, thorns tearing into my shirt, but I kept going, pulling myself into blackness. I was quick, I won't even lie, so I knew there was a chance they only heard my movements but didn't actually see me slide out. Behind me, the tent shook once more, their hands pressing down on it, maybe checking if I was still inside. I froze where I was in the dirt, 30 feet out, biting the inside of my cheek to keep from gasping aloud. The man then got angry. "Fuck it, do it." The scrape of a lighter wheel came and the whole place went up in flames. I crawled faster, thorns ripping skin, my pack dragging, every sound titanic around me. My heart begged me to stand up and run, but I forced myself to remain low, praying the brush would hide me. I was expecting a baseball bat to come down on my back of my head at any moment because these people were out to kill a homeless dude. Then came the flare, a burst of orange glow that lit up the palmettos. I took a chance and glanced back. The lighter flame danced in that woman's hand, casting up their faces from the dark. Two strangers, eyes wide, lit up almost like demons. The man leaned down and dumped the rest of the fuel and it went up in a full inferno. And that's when I broke. I shot to my feet and bolted off through the scrub, branches snapping behind me. My boots were slamming dirt, lungs fighting with the humid air. Behind me, the tent collapsed in a hiss of smoke and flame. Gasoline caught with a roar, fire literally turning everything to daylight. The woman shrieked and the man shouted after me. I didn't stop though. I tore through the brush, through the thorns, over roots, until the canal glittered through the trees. I nearly tripped into the water but veered off and slammed up into the gravel path. I heard boots behind me now, real and furious. I felt them splashing gasoline in my back. They were getting closer, within a foot of me. I sprinted, feet hammering, lungs exploding. The canal stretched black and endless to my right, forest tight to my left. No cover, no turns, just a straight path ahead. Their footsteps were getting closer now, closing in on me. And then I risked a glance finally and they were gone. No running, no shouts, just an empty path behind me, firelight flicking faintly in the distance behind me. My body was begging me to stop, but fear shoved me forward, faster, until my knees buckled and I crashed into some sand at a bend where the canal split. I lay there gulping at the air, knuckles raw, clothes torn, and the smell of gas still thick in my nostrils. The fire raged off in the trees. By the time the sky had started paling, my legs barely worked. I'd followed the canal until it spit me out near this country road, headlights streaking past in the early morning traffic. I must have looked like hell. My clothes were torn, my face was streaked with mud. My eyes were wild, but nobody stopped. It didn't matter, I wasn't trying to explain, nor did I want to ride. I was content to be well away from everything and everyone. I cut across this drainage ditch, collapsed behind a guardrail, and stayed there until midday. The world looked normal again, commuters sipping at coffee, buses and mail trucks zipping by. Nobody had any idea what was burning back on that trail. When I finally forced myself up, I thought about going back for the rest of my gear, my knife, my tent, my pack, all probably gone with the fire, and I couldn't bear the thought of going back and looking for anything. I knew what the result would be. I hitched a ride out by noon, and the driver asked where I was headed, and I told him, "Anywhere but here," and he laughed. For weeks after, that smell of gas was still clung to me, like it had worked its way under my skin. I'd jolt awake at night, sure I was about to go up in flames. I think the worst part, when I asked around about that stretch of canal, folks just shrugged at me. Nobody fished there, nobody walked it after dark, nobody heard about fires or arsonists, nor about my shit burning up. There was no history of anything like that over there. I know this much, I definitely couldn't have been the first that they'd circled, probably not the last either. They had this routine, it was a game to them. Maybe they set us on fire and dragged the remains into the river, I don't know. When I close my eyes at night, I can still see the flame sparking in her hands, the way they both just leaned toward my tarp with that awful calm. They were ready for me, and I'm beyond grateful to have spoiled their plans. They're frosty out there. I'd been on an extended road trip that summer, drifting between Walmarts and strip malls, places where nobody looks twice at an old sedan parked off in the corner. This one seemed perfect, an abandoned mall inside a quiet suburb, weeds pushing through the asphalt, most lights were dead, no cameras, no security trucks making any kind of rounds. I tucked my car between two others that looked like they'd been long forgotten, dusty windshields, flat tires, so from a distance, it would just look like another junker waiting for a tow. I reclined the seat, hoodie up, windows cracked an inch. The air smelled like rain on hot pavement, oil and dust baked together. Out across an empty parking lot, a single flickering street lamp buzzed. I settled in and smoked a blunt, got ready to watch stand up on my cell phone and sleep for that night. It felt safe, at least for that moment. When you're sleeping in a car, you never really fully shut down though. Every slam of a door, every bass thump from a passing car makes you snap your eyes open. I drifted in that state until sometime after midnight when something pulled me awake for real this time. It wasn't a sound and it wasn't footsteps. I saw a figure slipping down the perimeter of the fence line like a ghost floating along the chain link, and as I watched them, I realized they were headed for the rear of my car. I lost sight of them and tried to get a glimpse in the rear view, and sure enough, there he was. He peeled away from the edge of the property and started closing in on my car. I closed my eyes in horror and waited for something to happen. I heard gravel crunch near my rear bumper and my breath caught. I sank lower into the seat, staring straight forward. A figure loomed outside, tall, shoulders hunched forward, face shadowed by the flicker of the single streetlight. He stood super close to the car like he was going to jump in it. I could see his form from the corner of my eye, just beyond the glass. My fingers gripped the ignition, ready to bolt if I needed to. Then he moved away, not away, closer. He ran a hand along the glass, fingertips squealing as they dragged across the window. The sound went through me like nails. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I froze, praying he couldn't see me through the tint. I had a custom job that I'd been relying on for privacy. My phone set face down in the cup holder, black screen staring up at me. If it lit up, I was done for. He'd definitely see me. He circled, pounding his hand on the roof, down the passenger side. My eyes darted to the locks, engaged, but my chest felt like it might burst through the glass from how hard he was hitting my car. I half-turned the key, considering firing it up. He tried the handle then, once, twice, each tug making me freaking sweat. He stopped, then bent over, face nearly pressed up against the glass. I couldn't see his eyes, just pale skin, and his lips were cracked into something like a smile. He stayed there, inches away, breathing fog up against my window. He could see me now, there's no question in my mind. Seconds stretched on, and my hand hovered near the ignition, but turning the key felt like it would just set whatever this is in stone. Right now, we could both just walk away. He then straightened up, fist balling up at his side, and for a heartbeat, I thought he was about to smash the glass. And that's exactly what he did. I couldn't see it in the dark, but he had this big brass ring in his hand, wide enough to fill and encompass his fist. He sent it sailing through the driver's side window and showered me in glass. The ring itself then hit me in the chest. It was heavy as shit and knocked the wind right out of me. I snapped upright, slamming the key into motion. The engine coughed to life and gave me very little confidence in the moment. My headlights flared, scattering shadows, but there was nothing in the beam. Just rows and rows of dead vehicles and cracked asphalt, that gray building overshadowing the entire horror scene in front of me. I jammed the key into reverse, tires squealing as I shot backward. My hands shook so bad that the wheel wasn't even staying straight. I left him in the parking spot before me. The guy didn't even move, just waved as I rolled away. No run, no chase, just watching me leave. I whipped my car around, slammed it into drive, and ripped the hell out of there like a bat out of hell. I didn't stop until I got near the interstate, chest heaving, sweat pouring down my back, even with the full AC blasting, which was useless now anyway. My window was an open portal into the sticky night air. By dawn, I was parked at the police department, filing a report that surprisingly did lead to an arrest. Some drugged out local guy. Justice may have been served, but I was still out the cash of a window, and that was the start of a hard year for me. That was the last night I ever tried to sleep in a mall parking lot either, or really anywhere near people, at least until I finally got my own place. If you find yourself inside some kind of questionable situation, don't sit around like a dumbass like me. Run, jump, move, drive, whatever the hell you gotta do to get out.